It's okay. It's fine? Or could be louder. That's fine. Sound check, sound check. Does the okay. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Alexei Shadrin. I'm CEO and co-founder of EverCity. Happy to start the Finance and Carbon Markets Day at the Digital Innovation Pavilion. And today we're starting with a very interesting workshop featuring our chairman of the board, Andrei Chicherin, who will share his unique experience as the former head of the Green Climate Fund Innovation and Co-Financing Facility. And we will talk today about maximizing the GCF funding opportunities, which I'm pretty sure will be very interesting for a lot of our partners and guests. So without any further ado, I'm passing the mic to Andrei.
Thank you, Alexei. Good morning, colleagues. I hope everybody is fresh after yesterday's Saturday night fever and festivities of the National Day in Dubai. God bless this beautiful country, its wise leadership, and hardworking people who make their best to facilitate our work here at Hope effective, comfortable, and safe. Our presentation today is accessing financing from the Green Climate Fund, opportunities, challenges, and solutions. But before we start, I would like to share with you some of my personal thoughts about what is climate finance today. Definitely we talk about money, sometimes very big money, especially in the context of least developed countries or small island developing states, where the amounts distributed from the climate finance facilities and organizations like the Green Climate Fund create a lot of impacts and definitely trigger important changes in humans' behaviors, practices, and industry development. But beyond that, nowadays climate finance is not only about money, it's about cooperation. Being here at COP28, after so many months of this joint existence, first of all separated by the COVID pandemic, after that watching all these dramatic events happening in Europe and Middle East, some people may become desperate and thinking about what to do next and how to do the things. These questions might not find appropriate answers. In that sense, climate finance, climate projects is a beautiful and rewarding opportunities, rewarding for its participants, rewarding for environment and future generation of people who will benefit from the outcomes of the efforts that are financed by the organizations like the Green Climate Fund. So considering this balance between different parts of our human existence here on Earth, where some days we're fighting with each other, but at the same time we are balanced by goodwill and sincere effort of many people from different parts of the world. This is something that everybody should keep in mind while doing climate finance projects. And I hope this bigger picture will let us successfully navigate through the intricacies and challenges of the Green Climate Fund financing to the effective implementation of mitigation and adaptation projects. Next slide, please. A few words about me. My name is Andrei Chicherin. I am representing here EverCity, good partner of many initiatives related to transparency and accountability of carbon markets and climate finance projects. My professional background combines legal work at international law firms and capital markets experience, both the investment banking and big four companies. Since 2017, I've been working with the Green Climate Fund until recently, and initially was senior project finance specialist in the private sector facility, later on leading innovation technology transfer and co-founding platforms team and energy transition teams at the private sector facility of the Green Climate Fund. My significant experience and practical knowledge of working on the climate finance projects at GCF, I hope will benefit the audience of today's presentation and definitely will give you food for thought to approach interesting opportunities based on the knowledge that I'm about to share today. Next slide, please. So let's set the stage first and talk about the Green Climate Fund. Sometimes even people who are related to the climate projects uh, not really aware what is Green Climate Fund, what its activities, mandate, and history. So, in a short phrase, Green Climate Fund is the largest financial institution dedicated to the financing of the mitigation and adaptation climate projects. This is financing mechanism of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that was established in 2010. The organization became operational in 2014-2015 and currently actively working on a portfolio of projects exceeding 200 approved funding proposals and counting. Green Climate Fund successfully went through the several rounds of replenishment. And as we all know, yesterday, a big announcement came from the United States that presidential administration is committing additional $3 billion to support Green Climate Fund financing operations. This will be definitely a good support for the projects going forward. And during replenishment, second post-replenishment period of 2024-2027 will help to address strategic priorities of the organizations. Next slide, please. This is a brief outline of the operational modalities of the Green Climate Fund. This slide gives you a good snapshot and understanding what are the key principles, not only as some sentences and parameters in the governing instrument, but also principles that have practical implication and impact on the operational modalities and work in progress of the Green Climate Fund. First of all, organization is country driven, meaning that most of the projects are brought to the Green Climate Fund with close cooperation at the country level. It's national designated authorities, local stakeholders, direct access entities, and other interested parties who facilitate development and project funding proposals based on the country needs and country priorities. Another principle is open partnership organization. Green Climate Fund channels resources through the set of accredited entities. There are a few hundred of them already accredited, and definitely that process continues. But in addition to the accredited entity, we have another operating modality called project-specific assessment approach. This is one of the particular options that is available to the non-accredited entities to try and get one funding proposal to be approved with the Green Climate Fund. Next principle is flexibility in terms of financing instrument. In that sense, GCF applies full set of commercial and non-commercial financing instruments depending on the concessionality needs and priorities of the specific funding proposals. Green Climate Fund finances its projects in the form of grants, sometimes up to 100% of financing from Green Climate Fund alone, loans, equity, guarantees. There are opportunities to structure hybrid instruments, but the underpinning design feature of all this option is concessionality. Green Climate Fund is not interested in the business as usual scenario. Green Climate Fund is not a commercial organization that would be earning money on its asset base. Green Climate Fund provides money on concessional terms, meaning that the interest rates of loans might be low as 0%. Green Climate Fund is ready to finance additional components of capacity building and knowledge sharing with pure grant financing, which is not acceptable for many commercial market players. And definitely for projects, especially in the area of innovation and technology transfer, Green Climate Fund is capable to provide much needed equity as a reliable financing partner with patient capital. A bit more on that later, but next, let's go to the next principle, and this is balanced allocation. One of the priorities of the Green Climate Fund is derived from the guidance of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which specifically mentions balance between mitigation and adaptation in the climate finance support. GCF projects can be structured as mitigation projects, where the key outcomes of the projects or programs are related to the emission reduction of greenhouse gases. Or Green Climate Fund projects can be structured as adaptation projects to increase resilience of the local communities suffering from the adverse effect of the climate change. In reality, at least at the portfolio level, GCF is striving to maintain this balance, and that is important principle that should be kept in mind by anybody who is approaching the challenge or task of preparation of the funding proposal, and try to find a mix of mitigation and adaptation in so-called cross-cutting projects. Sometimes it's a good solution to let things to be moved forward. Another element, maybe briefly mentioned already, is related to risk taking and patient capital. Again, GCF is funded by the contributions primarily from the developed countries who provide this funding support to the Green Climate Fund in the form of replenishment resources. GCF, at least immediately, is not obliged to repay these amounts, although some countries provide funding in the form of loans. But majority of financial resources come in the form of grant financing dedicated to the Green Climate Fund. Therefore, that gives the organization desired flexibility to move the most challenging climate issues, supporting solutions through the financing mix appropriate for them. So in that sense, GCF can go all the way up in the duration of its financial instruments to 40 years. Again, 0% interest rate for some loans is, especially in the context of the least developed countries, is acceptable. And equity funding, where the partnership with the Green Climate Fund does not trigger traditional issues of the new ventures about dilution of the governance and so on and so forth. This is the package, and this is the value proposition of the Green Climate Fund. Cheap, long, and effective money that on the other side of the equation have some requirements of which we will be talking a bit later. Next slide, please. GCF is focusing, as I mentioned, and trying to achieve mitigation and adaptation balance based on the specific result areas that are indicated in its investment framework. And uh, basically guide GCF funding in terms of thematic areas that are available or eligible for the GCF funding support. First of all, we are talking about mitigation, which is quite easy task. Well, as long as you have established methodologies accounting for the mitigation effects of the project, and that is energy generation, transport, building cities, industries and appliances, forests and land use. Another set of result areas related to adaptation activities of the Green Climate Fund. For that, we are talking about livelihoods of people and communities, health, food and water security, infrastructure and built environment, and ecosystem services. Again, as I mentioned, the best scenario or design of the project would definitely try to address a mix of mitigation and adaptation results. And given the fact that GCF sometimes struggling to establish or support tangible adaptation projects, especially for the private sector projects, definitely those who have valid business ideas addressing mitigate adaptation issues are more than welcome to provide their funding proposals to the Green Climate Fund. Next slide, please. So this is a brief snapshot of the needs and questions that are raised by the Green Climate Fund during the project structuring, review, negotiating, and finally approval. I would say that the first thing that has to come to mind of any project developer with the Green Climate Fund should be related to the climate rationale. Projects submitted to the Green Climate Fund either have to provide tangible results of emission reduction, depending again on the circumstances and parameters of the funding proposal, and adaptation outcomes, increasing resilience of local people suffering from climate effects of detrimental effects of the climate change. There are many proposals, fantastic development proposals that I saw in my practice. Unfortunately, they were not eligible for the Green Climate Fund because they lack this climate rationale. And I may be repeating it gazillion times, but climate rationale is the first thing. Until you define exactly whether it's mitigation or adaptation projects, and whether the results or let's say activities of the projects are linked in order to address specific barriers and ultimately delivering results to overcome these barriers with the support of the Green Climate Fund. This so-called theory of change definitely should be articulated as a relatively brief statement, but nevertheless clearly articulated by the funding proposals during the initiation stage. There is quite important part related to the additionality of GCF funding. Again, as I mentioned, GCF provides patient and concessional capital. Again, not many people will be finding an institution capable to provide a loan for 40 years at 0% to, let's say, to Mali. And in that sense, definitely GCF funding is a unique proposition. But in addition, or as a flip side of that, we definitely should articulate in our funding proposals why GCF is needed. What are the specific barriers, how they're addressed by the concessionality of GCF money, how the results achieved, and in that sense, bringing to the Green Climate Fund projects based on the principles of business as usual or acceptable to the commercial center, let's say grid connected solar power plant somewhere in India, let's say, where the tariffs of IPPs are quite low and definitely market is saturated by active private sector players without need of additional concessionality. GCF tries to avoid market distortion, and in that sense, question of additionality, why GCF money is needed, what issues and barriers they address, is another first thing that you have clearly have in mind. Country-driven approach, again, this is a manifestation of the principle that I was mentioning briefly, and in that sense, your project or funding proposal that you are maybe have in mind as potential applicant for the Green Climate Fund funding should definitely be shared with a national designated authority. Each country has a national designated authority, especially developing countries, and most of them are very active, receiving dedicated support through the readiness program to build their capacity and successfully support from the ground, being in specific country projects or program relevant for the climate priorities outlined in the national determined contributions and similar long-term strategies and similar strategic provisions made by by the countries. The operational part of this country-driven approach is non-objection letter. Each and every funding proposal has to have this non-objection letter, and the sooner you get, the better it is. I mean, it should be presented with the initial submission, something that would be signed by the national designated authority based on the template. NDAs are fully aware of this process and documentation that they need to approach, but in some countries, the process is definitely taking time. You have to educate stakeholders, engage them through the meaningful conversation, and try to get them on board with the support of the project, not only in the form of non-objection letter, but beyond that. Again, GCF review and approval process is very challenging sometimes, and we definitely would not or should not disregard that important political support from the country level. Overall, GCF is assessing projects along the 6 investment criteria, including impact potential, sustainable development potential, paradigm shift, country needs, country ownership, effectiveness, efficiency, and effectiveness. These are the investment criteria. Each of them deserves maybe another day of discussion with specifics that come from the practice, as well as theoretical design of the investment framework of the Green Climate Fund. At this stage, I'm definitely happy to outline these important things. 6 investment criteria that will have to go and be presented through the entire set of the funding proposal, including the template of the document, the funding proposal itself, and all its annexes to support and strongly articulate the reason alongside all these investment criteria. Submitted funding proposal is definitely analyzed by the dedicated teams of professionals within the public and private sector divisions, and in that sense, fully scrutinized in order to make sure that it is in compliance with the numerous GCF policies. Fiduciary standards, risk management, environmental social safeguards, indigenous people policy, and gender-related documents. GCF documentation submission sometimes gets very complicated, especially when the parameters of the funding proposal translated into the legal documentation of the funded activity agreement, which may easily exceed several dozen pages and require dedicated support both from the operational financial teams of the project developer as well as the legal team who is capable to translate this documentation part into the workable and ideally favorable for the project proposal proponent contract. And overall, this funding proposal submission is, as I mentioned, is not a standalone document. You have all the templates and formats on site. You can download them. But the funding proposal itself, with all the details, is just the tip of the iceberg. And the most important part of the submission, of course, in addition to the FP text itself, are the annexes, feasibility study, financial model, project budget, documents related to environmental social safeguards, environmental social management framework or action plan. Again, depending on the project parameters, these are the parts of the submission without which the project will not move forward, even if it has a non-objection letter. And of course, non-objection letter is the integral part of the submission. So the sooner it is there, the better it is for everyone involved in the process. So let's switch to the next slide, please. This is a snapshot of the process that basically guides the preparation, review, and approval of the funding proposal at the Green Climate Fund. The work that is being presented by the project developer is beginning sometimes way before the process starts at the developer level. And the most favorable part of the project initiation is related to the country program. So if the country program indicates priority areas where specific funding proposal are addressing and ideally fully reflect the specific needs, that's something that would definitely be considered as very strong argument in favor of the funding proposal from the country ownership principles. Country program, in a short description, a set of funding proposals or project ideas that National Designated Authority, in cooperation with key stakeholders or interested parties, tries to develop in cooperation with the Green Climate Fund and with financial support of the Green Climate Fund, and ultimately present to the GCF as some sort of a roadmap to guide GCF secretariat as well as potential project developers where the priority areas where they have to dedicate their force and attention. Proposal generation, this is something that I already was mentioning. We are talking about ideation, and I'm repeating again, climate rationale. That is something that should be going through the funding proposal, 6 investment criteria, all the documentation, scientific evidence in the feasibility studies, and definitely effective work of the dedicated teams. Funding proposal with the GCF is something that desperately needs buy-in from the senior management, political support sometimes from the highest level of the country leadership. And in that sense, we definitely would not be complaining if these things are going as development elements or dimensions of the funding proposal for effective preparation. After the funding proposal is prepared, again, based on the templates and annexes, the entire package gets submitted to the GCF secretariat. Again, as I mentioned earlier, GCF traditionally works and most of the projects come to it through the accredited entities. As I said, there are a few hundreds of them, and in the preparation of the funding proposal, the potential developers should pay close attention to the fiduciary standards and accreditation scope of the specific accredited entities they would like to engage. Not all accredited entities are equal, and there are 2 critical or important dimensions that you have to keep in mind in the accreditation scope of your future partner, your accredited entity. One is the project site, and project accredited entity should be receiving appropriate accreditation either for micro projects, which are up to 10 million US dollars of total funding, GCF and co-financing. Small projects up to 50 million US dollars of total funding. Mid-sized projects of 200 up to 250 million dollars funding, and large projects above 200 US dollars funding, total quantum funding. This is important parameter. If you bring funding proposal with accredited entities, I mean, say 50 million US dollars or 60 million US dollars funding proposal with accredited entities which are accredited for micro projects, it will not be going forward. You will waste a lot of time, effort, and definitely will be a bit disappointed. Again, preparation of the funding proposal is quite tedious process, and losing these important elements at the initial stage creates tremendous disadvantage to go forward. Another project dimension, project accredited entities accreditation scope dimension is the fiduciary standards. Again, some accredited entities are accredited only for grants and cannot disburse loans or equity. And some accredited entities may have only loan financing accreditation. So again, in a hypothetical situation where a project developer is looking for equity stake funded by the Green Climate Fund goes to GCF through not appropriately accredited entities, this will be the same outcome. A project funding proposal will not be rejected, but they will be sent. It will be sent back for a review and adjustment alongside the accredited entities. As I briefly was saying, funding proposals and GCF operational modalities are based on two main subdivisions: public sector and private sector funding proposals. Sometimes the separation of these divisional activities are a bit blurred, and I saw in my practice many instances then, well, quite public private sector oriented projects ended up being this public sector division, and vice versa. But as long as the project is moving forward, as long as the results and fiduciary standards are properly answered, this is not a big issue in terms of going forward. And definitely private sector facility and division of mitigation and adaptation of the Green Climate Fund, which is working on the support of the public sector proposals, working in cooperation, and definitely benefit each other in terms of their knowledge of financial instruments, sectoral expertise, and ability to structure and negotiate climate deals. After submission of the funding proposal to the Green Climate Fund, we have several rounds of interdivisional reviews. Basically, the documentation submission is shared the internet, and during the organized process of interdivisional review, all the divisions involved in the review and the consideration of the funding proposals submit their comments, and for a series of dedicated sessions, the funding proposals is being adjusted, or answers and comments are being answered in order to make sure that particular elements of the submissions are properly answered and comfortable for the secretariat who is supposed to support this project. On one hand, playing the role of advocate at the highest level forum of GCF, including ITAP and GCF board. On the other hand, being some sort of devil's advocate there. They will ask you a lot of questions, requesting a lot of additional information, and definitely anticipate effective cooperation during submission and review processes. In my experience, the good organized funding proposals with well supported team of developers is capable to deliver the funding proposal internal review process within 6 months. Although this is something that is definitely requires a lot of operational coherence, knowledge, experience, support, and relevant things like that. So that is the process of the GCF internal review and approval that goes through several stages of climate investment committees. So far, this is a specific body within GCF that is mandated to review and give go ahead or reject for preceding funding proposal submissions. And in ideal scenario, climate investment committee gives you a green light. Again, there's a specific system there that checks all the specific elements of climate rationale, of the feasibility study, of legal, fiduciary, budgetary parameters of the funding proposal. And if things more or less okay with the parameters of the Green Climate Fund policies, and again, the ideal funding proposals where things are green from the first day I remain to be seen, I believe. A lot of things are work in progress during the preparation stage. But if things more or less acceptable and some potential considerations of reinforcing or safeguarding conditions, Climate Investment Committee is ready to move ahead with the next stage of the funding proposal review, which is independent technical advisory panel. ITAP is a very important stage where the funding proposal is getting submitted to the group of high profile technical specialists covering primarily different result areas of relevant GCF operational modalities, energy, transport, forestry, agriculture, and so on and so forth. Important thing that ITAP, without a positive answer from ITAP during this stage, funding proposal cannot go to the next level of review and approval. This is quite condensed period. Funding proposal gets submitted to ITAP. Within few weeks, ITAP members give a list of questions to follow on with the funding proposal. Then the project preparation team on the accredited entity side is going ahead with the presentation and during 1 hour call has to give ITAP full set of details that would make the ITAP members comfortable to give a thumbs up for the funding proposal and proceed to the next stage. And finally, all funding proposals are approved by the GCF board. GCF board is a constituent body comprised of 24 members, 12 from developing and 12 from developed countries, who are involved in the review and consideration of the funding proposal. Don't be misled by these numbers. Each board member is supported by the set of consultants, advisors, and other technical specialists that at some point in time will be enrolled in the review and consideration or commenting on the funding proposal. And definitely, this is a very delicate stage where the FP document and legal contractual documentation may receive conditions which definitely on one hand may be complicating the process of the project implementation. On the other hand, may have budgetary implications for additional financing required to implement specific components. And by the way, conditions also can come from ITAP, although at this stage they are not formalized and not integrated or can be integrated. But the final word in this set of conditions is set by the board. Board normally approves projects by unanimous consent. However, according to the rules and procedures of GCF, there are opportunities to make decisions about the funding proposals as well as other matters related to GCF operational work in the absence of consensus. So, assuming again that things went well, and you definitely are welcome to check GCF board meetings at the Green Climate Fund website, where specific agenda items are dedicated to the review and approval of the funding proposal. And it will give you another tip of the iceberg in understanding how things are debated, how things are discussed, and what are the key elements of political scrutiny and high level scrutiny of the climate funding proposal at the Green Climate Fund. So please go ahead. All broadcasts of the Green Climate Fund board meetings are open to the public and can be downloaded. So feel free to find appropriate funding proposals that might be similar to the ideas that you have in mind, and definitely please feel free to check how they are being discussed by the board. Next slide, please. So, as you may guess, there are a lot of elements. There are a lot of challenging uh, parts in the process of the funding proposal. And again, as I said, maybe another one more time, climate rationale is a thing that many funding proposals are struggling to establish. Not only dedicating that to a particular country Z or area in that territory is vulnerable to the effects of the climate change. This is a pretty standard uh, phrasing that can be obtained uh, with not so much work from googling it, but comprehensive linkages of the climate rationale with the dedicated feasibility studies that would articulate climate risks, climate needs, baselines of the emission scenarios, and these are the critical elements that sometimes and many times, even for the seasoned accredited entities, is a challenging part of the preparation. By the way, recognizing that fact and contributing to the capacity building, GCF has dedicated financing resources for the project preparation. And project preparation facility can give up to $1.5 million for the accredited entity to support feasibility study, consultants, legal work, structuring, and other eligible costs to make good funding proposal eligible and answering all the check boxes in the review and preparation. And that's what would be the best practice approach in my experience. This advanced engagement of the Green Climate Fund, and again, this requires close cooperation with NDA, is something that has to be analyzed and potentially engaged if you feel like resources or funding on a grant basis terms are needed to support your funding proposal. Next thing is again about the documentation, and I'm talking about specific elements of the FP funding proposals here, which is theory of change, log frame that links outcomes with activities and results of the project funding proposal, and components. Again, funding proposal can be structured in a way that some of these parts are not maybe eligible for funding, but necessary from the point of capacity building and similar activities point of view. And articulating these components and presenting them as integral part and needed element of the submission is something that have to be analyzed and done well. So again, in that sense, consulting support, experienced people who had prior work with the Green Climate Fund, and definitely in the engagement where you can receive guidance, appropriate guidance, is something that in practice would be a good set of solutions for you to implement in order to have good funding proposal preparation. And on the operational side, last but not least, is definitely something that we're talking about execution. Ideas nowadays are free. You can Google them and find them quite easily. But how to convert the ideas into the tangible action plan, how to engage and bring appropriate resources, motivate people, and definitely lead them forward. This is covered by execution. And in that sense, dedicated team, knowledgeable about different aspects and dimensions of the funding proposal, political support within the organization or outside of it, and technical innovation, which is not the least and not the last thing here. And in that sense, I'm definitely happy to give maybe a small outlook for you in connection with the solutions that are being developed and already successfully implemented by the EverCity EverCity company, our wonderful host here at the COP Pavilion. Next slide, please. This is something that would give you the sneak peek as the climate solution system, project management system that is being developed by EverCity. Again, we are talking about automated, structured, standardized process, which can be easily replicated and definitely capture all the important elements of the funding proposal, not only at the stage of the design and approval and review, but also at the stage of implementation. Again, implementation is a very important part, and in that sense, all the solutions that are provided by every city opening up good opportunities for those who are interested in engaging them to bring them up to speed within their internal management systems and definitely deploy them as approach to implement and structure and implement funding proposals with the Green Climate Fund. Next slide, please. I'll stop here and definitely as the presentation format today, happy to answer all your questions, colleagues, as well as hear your comments and observations. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, dear Andre, thank you for the great presentation. I think that was a very holistic information that we heard today. So maybe you can share some of the practical cases from your experience, like what was, what were the unsuccessful examples, what were like declined by by the process and why. Just giving a few examples, and maybe some of the successful examples that were like streamlined, that made it the fastest to the execution and obtaining the funding from GCF. Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you, Alexei. Very good question. Maybe many questions, and I'm risking to spend another 2 hours of precious times of our fabulous audience explaining and discussing this exciting topic. But let me just come back to the idea that quite often mentioned and repeated by GCF management, board members, and stakeholders. GCF is a plane that is being built on the go, which is a kind of funny concept in aviation. I definitely would not venture into boarding that plane to become a guinea pig for the exciting flight. But this is the reality of the funding process at GCF. Our organization is a startup, although quite massive startup in the climate finance. Again, 5 years or 10 years of operation is nothing, especially if you take into account decades that took many other organizations to develop, polish, and effectively maintain their internal project review and support system. So in that sense, even, let's say, a rejected funding proposal, and again, don't get me wrong, if you pick up some broadcasts of GCF board meetings, you will find a lot of them. Not a lot, but some of them will, unfortunately, did not get this support. Even that outcome is a positive result. So I would not say about the GCF projects as something of a failure. I would say something as a learning process that benefits the project teams, GCF itself, again, and the wider audience of potential stakeholders who learn from mistakes of others, who take them into account, and next time definitely do the things better. And in that sense, again, as I would say, we can say and mention every of the more than 200 approved funding proposals as a success story, with some drama, with some twists in the plot, and not free from, well, maybe as we take about global problems of mitigation and adaptation that we're trying to crack, it looks like really small bickering about very low level of corporate life. And again, I'm coming here to the idea of big picture. We should not lose sight of the big things being eclipsed by the operational challenges of calls, of discussions, and negotiations. So I repeat here that every funding proposal GCF approved is a victory. Sometimes small in a global scale, but definitely tangible and valuable, appreciated by people who are waiting for this support, who are relying on it sometimes, and who definitely get hope to proceed with mitigation and adaptation projects with GCF funding, unlocking good spirits and cooperation from stakeholders, evidencing the success of GCF funded support. Some of the examples, at least in my experience, that I can mention is definitely related to the least developed countries. Exciting program supported by the African Development Bank as a credit entity called Desert to Power, where almost $1 billion was catalyzed to support energy transition alongside the Sahel area of the five least developed countries in the African continent. Again, this was something that was not free from the process of many months of review, negotiation, changes on the go. But ultimately, I definitely proud of this achievement of our joint work with IFDP colleagues, with people on the ground, and good spirited people from the board and stakeholders who were unanimously supporting that and gave the green light to this important initiative. So that's something that again can be achieved by all of you sitting today and thinking about climate projects. $1 billion are reachable. Again, as I mentioned yesterday, United States announced 3 billion addition to the GCF capital, and this money needs to be deployed. This money, together with the replenishment, which are reaching in total 12 over 12 billion US dollars, these are the money that are waiting to be deployed effectively with the support of systems and solutions like EverCity to be deployed with maximum result, and definitely waiting you for your inspiration alongside innovative, transformative, and impactful climate projects.
Thank you so much, Andre. Just another quick question, and then I'll open the floor to the audience. Like, based on your experience, which, like, I mean, regarding GCF, I think everyone is interested in how fast you can go through the process and what vectors can really, accelerate the process. So, what do you think? Like, which are the fastest moving accredited entities? Are there any patterns? Like, are these like multilateral development institutions, or these are private banks, financial institutions, or these are maybe consulting companies that are also usually or sometimes are accredited entities? Or so, based on your experience, which types of accredited entities are the fastest moving within the process? Thank you.
Yes, very good question. And partners from UN system, UNEP, UNGP can be mentioned as those who consistently deliver, again, maybe on a smaller scale and alongside private sector focused funding proposals where mostly grants or highly concessional instruments are deployed. So in that sense, smaller scale funding proposal in cooperation with organizations like UNEP, UNDP, or others. Again, feel free to check who got the most number of accept approved funding proposals. So these are the good indicators of work. But again, the work and results are not limited by the specific timeline that is reached as a successful approval. Funding proposal is something that builds internal capacity to go ahead for the accredited entities to submit next funding proposal, a program that would cover not only isolated country but several countries simultaneously achieving maximum results. And in that sense, there are no unique, standardized boilerplate templates that would be that can be unlocked in this expedited process. It's important, but the sooner you start it and the more things you do, the easier it will be for you the next time.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to give the floor to the audience. So maybe you want to ask some questions to Andre. Yes, yes, please, and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. Gives a great overview of what the GCF can do for countries and with projects and accompanying countries in that process. So we've heard that like the business model and the financial model can be assessed to be sound by GCF or external partners who work with the GCF. But I'm wondering a bit about how, if there's something about the institutional setup in the countries that might impact project the project itself for it to have the go ahead or not, and how is that assessed? Because we know that many developing countries maybe don't have the criteria that's required to access climate finance support. So I'm just wondering a bit about that. If you could say a couple of words. Thank you.
Indeed, absolutely. Internal capacity and knowledge within the stakeholders, especially at the country levels, are critically important for the successful design and implementation of the funding proposal. In some countries, they are more advanced and definitely well equipped with proper personnel, knowledge, database, prior achievements of the approved funding proposals in their territory. And in that sense, these are the low hanging fruits or good, reliable potential partners. In some other countries, this is not accomplished yet, and there are a few of them who are still not receiving any funding support from GCF, at least on the for the funding proposals. So, in that sense, uh, saying how and what are the factors are driving the decision making process within NDA is maybe beyond my ability, because as I mentioned, country ownership principle is something that is being implemented and enforced, and unless NDA, whatever the internal processes and decisions, gives you this non-objection letter, this is a one-page document, but still it's the tip of the iceberg, and behind that maybe sometimes complicated, and I cannot exclude political wrangling among different competing authorities within the state structure of a particular state. So yeah, until we get this document and NG is fully free to design the process of review and approval, it might be done from scratch. It might be done based on the already established and successful processes. Every country is unique in that sense, so they are in the driving seat at this stage. So you have to be definitely prepared for education, and you mentioned rightfully financial model. This combination of words scares many bureaucrats. If you talk about IRRs, NPVs, Excel, and rightful educational effort, appropriate engagement and explanation is absolutely critical here. So again, I'm coming back and going in circles about this importance of taking into account some sort of a black box projects, maybe sometimes that are not clearly articulated outside of the NDA. But I'm sure many of them, or maybe most of them, have these processes in place. And again, most of the countries received already GCF approval process where NDAs, local NDAs, were part of the submission of the non-objection letter, and therefore should be fully aware. Good thing is that you can reach out to them again through the website of GCF, where all the contact details of these focal points are mentioned, and feel free to talk to them preliminary about particular aspects of the funding proposals which are relevant.
Thank you very much. If I may ask a quick follow-up question, maybe I'll introduce myself this time quickly. My name is Jean-Pierre Sfer. I'm a consultant working for Climate Focus. My question is about blending like carbon markets and climate finance in some of these projects. Is that something that's really apparent, like using or leveraging carbon markets to finance projects as well?
Carbon markets, difficult story. GCF. I would say in internal debates about this topic, sometimes they are considered some sort of double whammy in terms of funding. On one hand, alongside the GCF concessionality, and on the other hand, through the carbon credits, the GCF would like to avoid. I mean, either you go through the carbon credits or you do it on a pure concessional basis with GCF only. If we talk about concessionality. However, having said that, there are some projects that take into consideration potential carbon offsets, carbon emission reductions, ITMOs outputs. And I would say there are solutions. Again, maybe it deserves specific consideration going forward based on the details of the funding proposal and other things are relevant for that topic. But yes, this is not something straightforward and goes well beyond my ability to dwell into that without having full set of details.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Are there any more questions by the audience? Please.
Hi. Hello. 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 Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. I'm Satom from the Maldives with my friend Niaz. We work with. We're actually working at an NGO called MSRO, Maldives Space Research Organization. But we've been exploring a few projects in terms of the submission to the GCF fund. But one thing you mentioned just caught my attention. You mentioned that scalability is a component that's considered when the proposals are being looked at. Has there been any incidents where an application has come in with support from more than one government, or like is there a process for this, or is there a special consideration giving the scalability of a project?
As I mentioned, one of the principles is open and cooperation approach of the structuring of the funding proposal in GCF. And if there's specific engagement, maybe not from the government per se, but government-sponsored organization who is providing technical expertise, resources, financial co-financing package. I think that there's no particular issue here. We are addressing global problems. We cannot divide ourselves because, some members of the team have different nationalities or affiliation. It will not benefit neither our planet nor specific country. And that approach, I think, consistently being supported. And you can again see all the co-funding partners, and in many cases find this state-sponsored organizations. Some of them are accredited entities of GCF.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, dear participants of the GCF Funding Opportunities Workshop. We will be happy to continue this conversation with you and Andre, and please bear with us today. We have some really exciting sessions covering green debt innovations, covering carbon markets liquidity, covering digital MRV, and more. So bear with us, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.